after you win?
We're going with the age thing. There you go. Tom White, class of '84, played in the back line, fly half wing, and I played for 4 years, from the beginning of freshman year through senior year with a little sabbatical due to a broken leg, and received the Hans Grauert Service Award.
Excellent. Bobby Kaps, class of '85, scrum half, played from '81 to '85. I didn't receive any awards.
Well, that's to be expected.
That's why you get to sit with me here today. This is your reward.
Although I was elevated to status of piss boy for selections on a Thursday.
Well, a lot has changed since you guys played. Back in your era, the team was run basically by students. And I know, as you've indicated, and although you didn't win any awards, I know you're very much involved in that, Bobby. Could you kind of describe how being a student-run team worked?
Yeah, I mean, for me, I was a back captain senior year, and I remember Sean Duffy was the scrum captain. We had over 100 guys come down the first day, which I think is a pretty good indication of the character of the club, the personality of it, and people want to be a part of it. We had a lot of guys who were seniors who were just happy to be part of it for 1 year. I also remember when I was a freshman, we had a ton of freshmen and a lot of seniors, class of '81, class of '84. And there was no real hierarchy. I mean, the seniors would kid us and you know, let us know we were freshmen, but at the end of the day, you earned your place in the club by what you did in terms of serving the club, and that was huge. And I think that's part of why it was so successful when we were there. I mean, we had, I think in the year in '84, we had A side, B side, split C side, split D side. We booked as many opponents as we could.
I recall having to sometimes split B side because we had so many players.
Yeah.
So yeah, so that's what, 6 or 7 teams.
Yeah, it was crazy.
But also the selections when you were captain on a Thursday night, you had to show up for practice. So we kind of self-moderated ourselves.
Yeah. Yeah,
I was Pid,
yeah,
who looked after the process.
Yeah, Pitt always, you know, and
up.
really about attitude, attendance, whatever. One of the ones I remember from, I think it was my junior year, and we went to Providence, and you talk about selections, and it was so competitive that in order to decide who played A and B, you started to split hairs on things like who came in first place in the run, not because you wanted to do that, but because you just had to define it some way. Right. And we went to Providence, and one of the guys who shall remain nameless, who was a perennial A player, they put him on B side just because they had to give the other guy a shot. And he played, and actually was against his brother's school, and was like a one-man wrecking crew. It was really fun to watch. But that I think that was an indication of the real democracy that was at work. I mean, you earned it, and there were always issues. We did have one memorable issue with selections where we got particularly creative with the names. I think this was my last selection senior year. And there were two problems with it. One was the names were so esoteric, we didn't know who was playing A, B, or C. And then the other issue was that some of them were probably not suitable to publish in a public forum. So rather than post them on the bulletin board in the campus center, as we always had, we decided it was safe to put it in the second stall of the men's room. So that Friday morning was a very crowded bathroom as everyone was trying to figure out where it was posted and who the heck they were.
That was definitely the highlight of the selections, the nicknames, unequivocally.
Yeah.
But
well, it's definitely something I think maybe that tradition has continued. Tom, you had mentioned Providence. What were the typical teams that you guys played against during your years?
I'm Boston College. I remember a lot of wars against Boston College, Yale, Rutgers, Seton Hall, Providence, St. Anselm's. Yeah, that was
Siena.
a one trip. Siena?
Siena we played.
Oh, that was you guys.
Oh, that was us. But what about Holy Cross?
Holy Cross, we played a lot.
bit of a
Those
rivalry.
were brutal. You
Army.
went down to
We
Drew.
played Army a
Yeah,
couple
we
of
played
times.
Army.
Yeah.
That was memorable. Yeah, I think that's kind of the bulk of Fordham and Iona. I don't know if I said those.
Right, Fordham.
Yeah, but yeah, I remember those.
So basically, New England teams, New York,
Right.
and down.
Well, it was funny for me because I had a cousin who played on St. John's, one on Georgetown, and one on Iona.
The White
so
family
basically
was
everywhere.
fire deep.
So yeah, it was always.
But you guys so where did you guys travel to though? You had, were you with the Bermuda guys?
They went to Bermuda. I didn't make the Bermuda trip.
But they had a Bermuda trip your
Yep,
year, right?
yep, yeah. One of the road trips I remember my freshman year, we went down to Georgetown, and it was either a 3-day weekend or a break or something. And we went down with a bus and a van. We had more fans at Georgetown than Georgetown did, and which was good because we pounded them. The other one I remember, great road trip, was Boston College, '84. They had their Beanpot tournament, Patriots weekend, great time. And so when you host your own tournament, you put yourself against the weakest teams so that you make sure you make the finals. So Boston scheduled us, and happy to report that we eliminated them from their own
First
tournament.
shot, take that,
So that was,
bam, Jesuit rivalry.
yeah, that was outstanding.
But St. Anselm's bears mentioning as well, because that was the trip that we loaded up the bus, and as you said, we had A side, B side, C side, D side, and get on the highway, and one of the players who will leave nameless, Mike Riley, was driving up, mentioned that his father has a liquor store on the way. The bus pulls over. We loaded up with kegs and a bottle of this, bottle of that, make it up to St. A's. And if you
And the
recall,
guy who worked there who loaded the bus? It's my buddy from high school.
See, of course, you always got a guy.
I got people everywhere.
Drive up to St. A's, give them a thumping, but that's the trip. If you recall, Pid was with us late that night into the Rathskeller, came out the back door, which was under construction, fell in the ditch.
Right.
And we had to scoop Pid out with his broken arm.
Yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
I believe that was the last time you were at St. Helens.
That's the last time we were running to St. A's.
Purely coincidental why we were invited back.
Those things do happen. They do happen.
Yeah.
We've talked a lot about kind of what has gone on, with the players, self-ruled, self-governed, however you want to say it. But, part of the team was how did it also parlay into the student body, to the campus. What kind of reactions did you get from the non-rugby playing students? Were you popular? I mean, I know you weren't, Bobby, but maybe Tommy was.
Yeah, you were speaking of global capacity.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that two of the things that I remember is the Hill being packed. I mean, we had massive, massive crowds. We did the publicity and we had posters all over the place. And I remember one of the years, because I guess it was after club football had folded, they were looking to have, the university was looking to have its fall alumni weekend and asked us if we would host our alumni game because we became the marquee, we went from the black sheep to the marquee event. It was hugely popular. And as I said to you, all the guys we had coming out for the first time, senior year, was really, I think, a great indicator of how well the club was run. It was popular, but it was popular for reasons that were something other than, gee whiz, it's great to go see. I think the character of the club was fun and democratic, and we played hard. I mean, we did real well.
It's true. We had a good, and that year we had a fairly good record. I mean,
Yeah.
Do you remember what your records were when you played?
We didn't lose a lot.
Played fall and spring,
No.
correct?
We didn't lose a lot.
those 2 years when we had those teams, we probably won 80% of our games.
I only remember one blowout, and it was at the Lehigh or Lafayette after the Halloween parade, after the Halloween party. And the kickoff was delayed because too many guys had makeup on their faces, and the ref was a real stickler. So makeup had to be removed before that
So
one.
we had a strong team in the mid-'80s for sure.
Yeah.
And since, one of the questions I was going to ask is about some of the songs that might come to mind. Since some of the lyrics are probably not appropriate for the audience that'll be watching it, are there any other maybe more appropriate songs that come into one of your memories? At a tournament
Well, we are doing this
somewhere?
interview on a Sunday, so I'm sure Kumbaya would be thrown. No, we were just talking before the camera went on about the Beanpot tournament, and everyone was singing their rugby songs. And the backdrop of this, when I was a freshman, we went to Iona, and I had played my first match, and I kind of knew the game from high school, but I didn't play all that well on the seaside. But they proceeded to do limericks against Iona, and thanks to my father, I probably know about 80 limericks by heart. So they were wondering who this scrawny little freshman was who they put up against Iona. And so we gravitated to the limericks. But at the Beanpot tournament, everyone was doing that, and we decided to reach deeper into our repertoire and do a rousing rendition of Me and Mrs. Jones, which to see several hundred guys doing that in the middle of God knows what field of Boston College was pretty memorable.
And then do the elephant walk out.
Yeah, and no, we held that one off. You don't do that to me and Mrs. Jones. I lose the dignity of the song, if it has any.
That's definitely an image I didn't need to put into my head, but thank you for doing that, Bobby. You'd mentioned some of the teams went to Bermuda and some other trips, and the teams that we had talked about previously have seemed to be mostly domestic and local. Did you have any experience playing against maybe farther away teams, maybe international teams at all in your careers?
Not in Fairfield, but after Fairfield they did. Yeah.
I know during our years the team went to Bermuda, neither Tom nor I went, but there was also a memorable trip down to Mardi Gras to New Orleans, and it was a 2-lane invitational, and it was just over the top. It was about 8 teams, and it was international because they had a Canadian team, and it turned out that the Canadian team was a men's club that illegally got in and ultimately won the tournament. So it was ironic because the names on the back of the T-shirt spelt Fairfield wrong, which we felt very right at the beginning of there it is. That's the one. Right at the beginning of the tournament, we see the.
I think that's French. It was Mardi Gras, right?
That's what they thought of us. But it was appropriate that we were second on the list because he had St. John's and University of Kentucky and another guy who should remain nameless in the first line out when we played Kentucky. He's standing next to him, and he said, "Kentucky, what state is that in?" They just looked at us like, "Good God!" Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, there you go. There's the.
A fine Jesuit-educated young
man.
And
I guess it would be that last one. The college would actually be that Canadian Men's Club.
Kwantlen, yes, the Canadian Men's Club.
So you did play against a foreign team.
And that was one heck of a tournament and a great chance for us to travel together, but. It was during Mardi Gras, so that was the perfect storm. A rugby team in New Orleans during Mardi Gras. And we did end up marching.
Seemed like a good idea at the time.
We did end up marching in the parade. That's another story.
Well, as you walked us through your years of playing, obviously changes happen within the club, new players. Tommy, to your point, you have a lot of non-rugby players coming in. Could you give us a little bit of maybe a synopsis of kind of how you saw the growth of the club over those periods of time? You've mentioned the number of participants, Tommy, but maybe level of play that may come into mind as far as the athletes that were playing, and also how you think that affected kind of the history of the club.
Yeah, I mean, we had some tremendous athletes. We had guys who were, top athletes in high school in hockey and wrestling and football and everything else. Paul Sheehy played your year, ended up playing for the Eagles, class of '85. I like to say I taught Paul the game because he was a wing behind me for a day and a half until they figured out he was a hell of a lot faster. Yeah. So I think based on the sheer numbers, 1, 2 is the quality of the athletes. 3 is there were a lot of guys who played other sports that they just no longer wanted to play at Fairfield, or there was no opportunity to play it. So these were real top athletes, and because it was so competitive, you couldn't mail it in. I mean, you could, but you might split a D game. And I also think that, back to your point earlier about the fact that it was student run, the only way you were going to learn the game was by another student, another guy. And you had seniors coming in being taught by sophomores, and nobody really gave a damn because if somebody knew how to play, they knew how to play, and that's really how you were going to learn the game.
And some of there were very few, but some of the high schools where people played, like Michael Fox, like Xavier, had some pretty strong representation for players.
Yeah, Xavier, Fordham Prep, some of the Loyola boys from Chicago.
Right.
We had, there were a number of guys who had, I knew the game. I hadn't played it in high school, but they had it.
I think that's what was peaking with the popularity. It was so inclusive.
Yeah.
It welcomed everybody.
No, absolutely. Well, obviously the bar was very low because you and I were 4-year members, so they weren't very stringent in their requirements.
No, they weren't, but you've basically described a kind of a social structure, if I could put it in those words.
I think you just did.
I did. Thank you. I did put it in those words.
Well done.
And it becomes more of the universal tradition of the rugby team. And I was wondering if you could give a couple of examples of maybe how you upheld the rugby tradition at one point or another in your memories. And more so, you may tie back into the, going back to the social aspect of after the game. You've just basically beat on the person across the field from you. The game ends, another part of the tradition begins.
Yep. It's a great point. And one of the things I loved about the game was that you'd play at 110% and bang heads pretty hard. And then when the whistle blew, you stepped on the other side of the sideline, it was over. I remember hosting a tournament in junior, senior year, and we had the Fairfield, I don't know what the heck we called it. And we hosted, I'm pretty sure it was Fordham, and I knew a number of the guys on the team. And we had the party down the beach. And it was great. It was a very physical game. And we had a lot of laughs on the beach. I remember them remarking about laying on the beach and playing with the sand and saying, it must be really hard to go to class when you're here. And I said, well, some are more successful than others in that challenge. But yeah, it was very, I don't ever remember having an issue. One or two people where, you know, when you went to an away game and most of the other team didn't show up, that was a real sign of disrespect. And you know, that kind of stuck in your craw. And
it was rare when it happened, but when
right.
it did, it was.
Yeah, and you either didn't play them, or next time you played them, you made sure you went pretty hard.
Plus, we would always host them and put the players up because there's no hotels, there's no real funding, right?
Right.
So you count on the other team to come through with the logistics, and as a rule, they did. I mean, that's what I liked about it.
Although we did sleep in a classroom in Georgetown, I don't think that was a part of the
in the urinal. Every now and then that goes awry.
Yeah.
And while you're hosting these parties, there's obviously a sing-along that happens. And Bob, maybe you could highlight what would happen if somebody actually messed up part of the verse.
So that was great fun. Eating the cleat or shooting the boot, which often I did because you'd have a guy whose DNA is predisposed to singing limericks and getting them all right, and you miss a word, and the next thing you know, you got this big, nasty cleat with a beer in it from the other team's prop, and if I may, a film on the top from the legacy of the game, and you've got to drink that up. But yeah, those traditions, while sounding foul, did keep us all in check.
Well, I'll tell you about shoot the boot. You never heard this one. I think the first time I saw it, I don't know, junior years, we were playing Rutgers. And there was a guy on the other team who was probably about 6'3" in both directions. He was huge. And his foot was similarly huge. And his boot was a boot. I mean, you could probably sleep in it. And that was the first boot I saw anybody shoot. 25 years later, a couple of years ago, I was playing in an old boys tournament and kind of jumping in with different sides. And I got chatting with this guy afterwards, and he said he played for Rutgers. I said, wait a minute, and I remembered the guy. It wasn't him. He was the ringleader, this guy, Bruno. And I said, wasn't that somebody? He goes, yeah, whatever the guy's name was, Animal or Caveman. So 25 years later, I met the guy who started that madness. Yeah.
Well, this is, I guess, shooting the boot is definitely a tradition, one that, I guess, if you were going to talk to the current kids, the leaders of the team, as far as traditions that come to mind, that being one, and many others, of course. Which ones would you highlight that you would say, really, you need to keep these traditions in the club?
Well, I'll take that one because that was a different sensibility that we just spoke of in a different time, but all the more, the camaraderie of the club. Tommy and I are friends, and you and I are obviously friends.
Tommy and I are.
Those relationships last for many years, and by self-governing and by keeping the club alive and by having a place where people, Tommy talked about the athleticism of the people that came to play. We played during college, a lot of us played after, but most of all, the friendships have transcended the years. And those traditions of being, well, at the time, self-governed, self-taught, but just keeping the team alive and keeping it a full-bodied team on the university and keeping those parties afterwards and the camaraderie with the other schools and maybe an occasional trip. Keeping the health of the club means a lot to those of us who played.
Yeah, and I think too, some of the, to your point, it was a different time and place. I think some of the specifics change, but the principles don't. And I think, we did the, sticky wicket and bat races, and we did bat races on the beach, and guys ended up in the Sound. But I think one of the great principles that I loved is that it was not a place for real self-centered, egotistical lunatics. I mean, these guys are many of us are type A driven, recovering control freaks, or maybe that was just me. Forgive me. But I think that what happened then, and I would imagine still happens now, is if you get a little bit too full of yourself, there are plenty of guys around to knock you back down a peg and never get too superior. And it's subtle things like seniors being willing to line the fields, carrying the ball bag. You're never above that, no matter what you do. And I think that humility, it also kept you very genuine, sincere. There was no room for phonies. They came and went. They didn't stay.
Yeah. Now, I would I would agree with that, and I think you also mentioned one of the selection process. And when I was there, it was the 3 A's, and I always appreciated the order of the 3 A's: attendance, attitude, then athletic ability.
Right.
And I think that fills in very well with your point. You're not above it.
Yeah.
You're part of the team. You need to be there and participate. And I always thought that was a very unique approach to a selection process. If I may, we've all had an experience with one specific individual over our 4 years, Pid Paul Davis. And he was a very unique individual and very important to this club. And I was hoping that maybe you could share with us some of the reasons why he was so special to the club. He was a unique man, and there are very attributes that come forward, and maybe you could expand on that.
You want to take a shot first? Or you want
You
me to
should,
do?
that's all you. You and Pid were close.
Yeah, Pid, there were so many things I loved about Pid. When I talked about humility, Pid was probably the chief enforcer of humility. If you got a little bit full of yourself, he would be more than willing to set you straight. So many great memories of Pid. I remember guys took his class because they thought that rugby players got a free pass. it was anything but the
Rude
case.
awakening.
As a matter of fact, I read The Guns of August, which was one of the books, one of the best history books I've ever read. And I read it about 4 or 5 years out of Fairfield, and I went back to an old boys game and I said, Pid, that book, The Guns of August, it's a great book. And he said, why do you think I've been assigning it for 20 years, moron? So I appreciated that. We had a lot of fun. I maintained Christmas cards and seeing Pid for decades after I was out of Fairfield. The other thing, and I don't even think you knew this, or many people knew it, but when I was in high school, my dad started to get real sick, and it was kind of he had a long, tough road ahead. And I wasn't necessarily looking for father figures or anything, but Pid was very well read and obviously a big fan of history, as was my dad. So I thought that was kind of ironic. And we exchanged great letters and had a lot of fun. And we certainly took shots at each other, but it was always with great affection. And I appreciated the continuity, the time that he gave to the club. One of the things we did when we did I guess it was the 20th anniversary, there was no database, and Pid just sat there we sat there one night at his house, and he went through yearbooks, and just from memory, we just wrote down everybody who had ever played in that was the 20th anniversary, so it was the 18, 20 years that Pid had been involved. He just did a roster by memory from the yearbook. I thought that was pretty amazing.
He was always, if you recall, we'd always yell history of the club, and he would take
Right.
the time to stand up on the podium right next to the banner behind us. And I remember one year, if you see this shirt, Terrence was tagging me, so good to provide. It featured Pid in all his elegance there, in that beautiful shot of his head. And on the back it says Fairfield University Rugby Club, 25 years and still rucking. And amazing individual. It's sad that the going forward teams don't have won't have his presence there, but another reason why Pid was a history professor. He loved to talk about the history of the club, how the Growart family dedicated the field, which was one of the only dedicated rugby fields in New England, and also just the love and he was not easy on us when we had him in history. And I remember one time going to selections and you were there. My brother happened to be the scrum captain, and I was one of the freshmen that had to run around and be the piss boy and bring the beers to everyone. And Pid, we have a quiz tomorrow. Could you at least throw me some questions? Not a chance, not a chance. But one of the tenderest memories I have of Pid, unfortunately, was I was riding home on the train here to Fairfield, where I live now. And we got the note that Pid was deathly ill and in the hospice care over here around the corner in Carrollton. And the email, with the CCs on the emails, hundreds and hundreds of rugby folks copied in. So I was riding home with some other ruggers, got off the train, went over there, and there was Pid on his deathbed, with a big blanket perched over, and obviously his breathing was tapering off, and you could tell that he was on definitely his deathbed, and he had a big Notre Dame banner on the blanket, and it was, while it was sad, I read every name of those ruggers into his ear, and next to him was a professor each of the professors from the university who also shared an affection for Pid had been keeping a vigilance along with the family. And I have to say, right to the end, he affected us all, and he was an amazing part of of the program, and always hopefully will be.
Yeah. I think one of the things too is we've had we've had times where the club has struggled to survive, but obviously the longest running club on campus. I think Pid's presence was key to that surviving all that time, and obviously we don't have him. So the greatest tribute to Pid is to continue to strengthen the club. And I think that one of the great things about the Friends of Fairfield Rugby and all the alums from the 60s, 70s, 80s and forward, now we've kind of gotten the family back together. And I don't think it'll ever be at risk again. And I think we owe that not only to ourselves, but to him. And I think that would be the greatest tribute to Pid. I think it's what he'd want. So we'll make the club stronger than ever.
Well said.
I would echo those words. And it actually leads into one of my final questions that I'd like to ask you is, we've talked about the past, we've talked about their traditions, and now it's the future. Fairfield Rugby Football Club has been around, as you said, the longest running club. We've added a women's club to it, which is great. We're having these events, alumni support. So going forward, what would you like to see as far as the future of the Fairfield University Rugby Football Club?
More of the same. I think the recent past, creating a real strong organization where not only it's not just about doing stuff for the university, but Bobby was talking about in Pid's last days, people rallied around that. Guys like to, and now the women's program are going to like to reconnect with people who have this shared experience. So as we give people opportunities to do that, I don't know what the opportunities are going to be. I mean, the 50th, obviously this is spectacular. We need more opportunities like that, and to connect us old farts. Yeah, we're in that category now. with the current players, and just keep everybody connected to the long and colorful history.
I couldn't have said it better, and it's incumbent on us to make sure that remains, and to support the players, and to get an alumni association together, so when they graduate, we can maybe help them in the work world and stay close with them on their endeavors to keep the club competitive, and also for them to reach out to us, which they've been, and I've seen a lot more of that. So I look forward to the 50th and the give and take. It's going to be awesome.
Yeah.
Should be a great time. Well, gentlemen, we're running towards the end of our tape, so I want to first of all thank you for your time and answering the questions and providing your insight to the club and to all those now watching it. So, as I know, Tommy loves to sing, and Bobby, you're just going to have to work with him. Maybe if you would, as a sign off, maybe sing one of your favorite rugby songs. I'll leave the choice up to you.
This thing goes viral, we're in trouble.
We're already in trouble.
Oh. There once was a girl from Darjeeling who danced with incredible feeling. Not a noise could be heard, not a sound, not a word, just the fly buttons hitting the ceiling.
Bobby, anything you'd like to
I
add to
would
that?
like,
He usually does his in
I would
French,
like
but he doesn't want to
full
show
edit-
up.